Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Late Show. This is your host, Young Brando, live from Los Angeles. We are a little delayed, but we're late than never. We are going to talk watches and we are going to look at the Fine Watches auction, an online auction that's based out of Sotheby's in Paris, that is going to close on March 28th. So, right around the end of this month, a little less than 2 weeks away. There are about 175 lots, so quite a lot of watches to go through. I'm going to send the link to the chat as I usually do. And if you want me to pull up any of these watches, if you want me to discuss a particular lot, feel free to send in the lot number with a super chat, and I'll be more than happy to jump in, dive right in, and discuss the watch with some horological and historical detail. Now, let's hold that in reserve for a little bit. I want to highlight a couple of posts that I made on my Instagram earlier today. I usually post once, but I had a couple of glitches with my Instagram today. So I ended up, one of them ended up going online without the caption. The other didn't go online at the time I wanted. But whatever that was, I just wanted to go over them again. If you want to follow me on Instagram, that would be much appreciated. There is a lot of overlap in terms of contents, as you can already observe. Um, the heading there too is watches and style, but there's also a lot of different kinds of content, a different perspective, as it were, even though horology and history is always in sight. Um, this is a blast from the past, so to speak, all the way back from the days where Eric Wind of Wind Vintage, a friend of the channel, was still writing for Hodinkee and had this wonderful section called Bring a Loop. That section, that segment continued its life a little longer even after Eric had left, but it is not there anymore because, as you guys know, Hodinkee would rather write on things that they have in stock, try to bolster their own sales. Everything is an advertorial. If they're not selling something of their own, they're trying to sell you some other brand that pays them. So good old days are gone. They're not coming back. If you want any semblance of that, for better or worse, you're stuck with me. This is from 2014 when Eric had dug up from a forum this listing for 40s Universal Genève tri-compacts in stainless steel. What makes this watch more rare than its examples, and I have to say, I have only come across a couple of them in my time, and both of them actually online and through photographs. It has a black dial. That black dial has beautiful golden numerals and a set of leaf hands, which are complemented by the gilt writing on it. So it's kind of a, you might say, two-tone watch with a touch of gold. It also happens to have a Portuguese calendar, which is not really unique, but it's still something you don't see every day. And this particular punch mark on the upper left lug, Eric identifies as a Portuguese hallmark, so it fits the story for sure. The serial number puts the watch somewhere around 45, 46 in the immediate post-war era. The dial shows signs of a very pleasant mottled tropicalization on that black and gilt backdrop, and the case is extremely sharp. Beautiful condition. It's powered by caliber 481, and the reference number is 22279. So that puts it, the caliber, the serial number, and everything puts it a few years after what I have. This piece was at the time listed by an Italian dealer for 6,500 euro. So he already knew what he had even a decade ago, because the ones with a black dial are extremely hard to find. And I've only seen one other tri-compacts from this era with a black dial, and that one actually was in gold. So this is quite fascinating, and it's very, very beautiful watch indeed. It's right here if you wanna show some love, if you wanna take a closer look, double tap, give a like. There's the link. Edward Chamberlain. At that time, it was €6.5. That was 2014. I don't even want to know how much it would list for in this day and age, especially with all this excitement about the revival of Université Genève. By the way, also let me know if you have any issues with the sound, if you have any problems hearing me clearly, or if it's too loud, perhaps. There are a few things going on with my microphone sets that I really didn't have time to figure out, and it's getting a little late. So I would rather soldier through with the show rather than mess around with the equipment. But if it is something that holds you back, keeps you from actually enjoying, please let me know. This is something I posted earlier today, and I've just forgotten what I was going to bring next to it to discuss. Let me just fetch that. Some of you might know the story about the Aquanaut's origin. It is a story that is surrounded by some mystery, and that is even shrouded with some apocrypha, but it is a story that Nick Fox tells in part in this issue of the Patek Philippe International magazine from 2017. 2017, of course, was the 20th anniversary of the Aquanauts as we know it today. So it was a particularly good time to talk about it. It's a piece called Every Day is Special. Let me pull it back up again. Right here. And of course, as you saw there, in 2017, Patek came out with the white gold version, the 5168G, with a diameter that scaled right over 42 millimeters, so kind of an extra jumbo version. And that was actually a model that spoke very intimately to the design's past, to the origin of the model. This is actually the very first Aquanaut to be created in white gold. It is a piece that was manufactured in 1997. And by all appearances, it is a piece that was a special commission and most probably one of a kind. Now, some of you might also know that as a design, as the case shape, the Aquanaut actually appeared a year before then, in 1996, as the reference 5060S, which was a yellow gold watch styled after a more streamlined porthole shape. It was mounted, it was presented on a black crocodile leather strap, and it had a black slate dial with Roman numerals and leaf-styled hands, all inlaid with luminous material, which with the date at 3 o'clock with that slightly cursive font is actually pretty common as a dial configuration in contemporary Nautilus pieces. And no wonder, because when the Aquanaut was first introduced, it was part of the larger Nautilus family. There wasn't that sort of sharp distinction as of yet in those first couple of years. Of course, when the 5060A came out in 1997, that was a watch quite distinct from the previous year's model. Not only did it have this field watch inspired dial with oversized Arabic numerals, it also had texture on the dial, which is an embossed semi-glossy black dial that was reminiscent of a grenade, and that actually echoed, that resonated beautifully with the texture of the tropical rubber strap on which the watch was mounted. And the story always was, and this is what Nick Fox talks about in this piece as part of a conversation with Thierry Stern. The story always was that this was a piece commissioned by a foreign dignitary who was looking for a watch for his nation's high-ranking officers, something like a gift for them. So the creation of a rugged, sporty watch that we today recognize as the Aquanaut was presumably for an officer. It had to be something robust, and at the time, this model itself was in fact unavailable to be photographed in the story. So you can't see it in this magazine. But Stern says, if I remember well, 4 little squares in the middle of the dial were diamonds or emeralds or sapphire or rubies or something. It was quite amazing because it was for a soldier, but was also set with a high level of stones. I still think about those watches and wonder why I've never seen one at auction, but they never ever appear. This was in 2017 for the volume 4, number 4 of the Patek Philippe International Magazine. Much to our benefits, much to my enjoyment, this watch actually appeared 3 years later. It was sold on November 28th, 2020 by Christie's Hong Kong. As you can see, it shares a lot aesthetically with the Aquanaut as we know it, with the stainless steel model that was introduced in 1997. It does, however, have a unique reference number, 5063. It is entirely executed in 18 karat white gold, of which it remains the only instance until the introduction of reference 5168G, which today happens to be in its various colorways, one of the most popular versions of the Aquanaut. But most markedly, it actually has an entire center section of the dial that is set with not 4 squares, but in fact 12 baguette cut rubies. I mean, look at these stones. Now, of course, the story was never officially confirmed by Patek beyond those lines that I just shared with you. As is usually their convention, they don't really divulge all the details or name the country or the person involved. We also don't know whether this watch in particular was the watch they were talking about in that article. We also don't know because Mr. Stern talks about multiple watches and emeralds and sapphires and diamonds. We also don't know if there are more examples of white gold Aquanauts from the same year as part of the same commission. But we do have the 5063, which also has a very distinctive déployant clasp with a raised Calatrava cross. And that, as you can see, is quite different from the 5060A and the kind of clasp that those stainless steel models had. And another minor detail is that it was also powered by a different movement than its contemporaries, a caliber 335 SC, which was actually used until 1992 for the reference 3800s, which is the mid-sized Patek Philippe Nautilus. This beautiful number was sold as lot number 2429 in the important watches, including the Ruby collection, on November 28th, 2020, by Christie's Hong Kong for an amount in the region of 625,000 US dollars. I thought this was a very intriguing story and a very beautiful watch, a fascinating variation of the Aquanauts, which has had a false start in 1996 and already quite an adventurous life, even in the first year of its manufacture, as it seems. So I dropped the link. So if you would like to drop a like for this, that would be fantastic as well. And here's the last one. I had a few glitches here too. Bruce G. Yes. Yeah. It's just such a so disjointed, so so delightful in the contrast, because that dial gets streamlined, of course, with later versions of the Aquanauts. It's smoother now, flatter, and more of a globescape pattern than the original grenade dial. But the jam setting somehow fits almost too perfectly. And especially with the rubies here. I mean, I can see it also resonating somewhat beautifully with emeralds. I can't quite visualize it in the same way with diamonds. Could be quite interesting with sapphires as well. But it somehow fits. And that blood red color of the rubies is just too precious. And maybe, maybe it does fit with the military imagery, kind of aestheticized insinuation of violence or something. But this is just perfect. You might know that Roger Federer has been in Los Angeles now for a little bit. He has attended the Academy Awards ceremony, and he has this collaboration with Oliver Peoples, and Oliver Peoples is headquartered in Los Angeles, even though, much like any other luxury eyewear brand, it is owned by the Italian giants Luxottica. But Roger Federer's new collection that is coming out with Oliver Peoples was introduced a couple of days ago at the Sunset Tower Bar in West Hollywood, with an event that had a star-studded attendance. But this particular picture brings together the CEO of Oliver Peoples and Luxottica Air, Rocco Basilico, and you might expect, naturally, when His Excellency is in attendance, there would be a lot of great Rolex watches out there to be spotted. He was himself wearing a rather unpredictable, if not necessarily unassuming version. You guys know that I have a soft spot for these, but they have been much maligned. This is the 116519 which is the version of the white gold Daytona with the matching tachometer bezel, presented on a leather strap with these fixed end links, which means that the watches can't be retrofitted, in fact, with a bracelet. Of course, these pieces come with a Rolex déployant clasp in the matching material. Kind of a pre-Oyster Flakes, let's say, presentation, which I actually really like. I'm even a bigger fan, I would say, of the racing dials, because that distinguishes the watch a little more, makes it something a little bit different rather than just a Daytona that is missing something, right? Like a bracelet, for example. But I completely understand why these are undervalued in the market, right? This is always the case with Nautiluses that are on leather straps, Royal Oaks that have been made to be worn on the leather strap, like the reference 1418. They're just not as desirable because people like the utility, wearability, and the ease of everyday use that comes with a bracelet watch, especially when they think of it as a sports watch, as something that was once a tool, but today something that has a lot of ease in daily wear. So I understand why they're undervalued by the market, but that's a great tip, I think, if you actually like the look, if you are not looking for some abstract, often imaginary investment value, but actually seeking a watch for you to wear on a regular basis, there are great deals to be had in that particular category. And that's, of course, very much true when it comes to the 116519, the white gold Daytona with the black dial. That's probably one of the most unassuming versions of it. And that's what Fede was wearing. And his counterpart, the Oliver Peoples CEO, Rocco Basilico, I'm tempted to say broccoli for whatever reason. I think James Bond has been on my mind lately. That might be why. Rocco Basilico, and what a name, by the way. I mean, it's like, with all due respect, it almost sounds like an Italian porn star, you know, but I'll take CEO and heir to, you know, a huge fortune. That works just as well. He is also wearing a Daytona, and as you can see, it is a Daytona with the Paul Newman exotic dial, the black version. I first identified it as a 6262. Turns out I was mistaken, because at KA Timepieces, Bradley Cunningham alerted me that it was actually simply a Paul Newman Daytona with a missing bezel, meaning that it was actually the 6263. So not this, though still with the pump pushers. But a 6263, which has the same configuration, but with the pump pushers. Right here, for example. And his was missing the bezel, basically. It may have simply popped out. It may well be something that he did, perhaps as a protective measure, because you guys know those plastic bakelite bezels can be cracked and easily damaged. But yeah, it turns out that was his Paul Newman Daytona. There were some other interesting watches in the event, but I was mostly transfixed to these two and the two Daytonas they were wearing. Thank you again for the likes, for the support as well. I'm going to shift gears and go to the auction talk now, where we are going to look at the Sotheby's Paris, which is going to close on March 28th at 2 p.m. Central European Time. 175 lots in total. Mostly usual suspects, I have to say, but there's some fascinating pieces as well. You just let me know if there's a watch that you would like me to focus. Maybe I will start with the Patek on my thumbnail. Talk about the successor to the 5960 reference that I really like in 5905 line 1A. And then maybe move ahead and talk about some other watches, because we talked a lot about Patek yesterday, because the In Eichen Zurich Timeless Treasures auction that we were focusing on, which was actually a curation entirely of Patek Philippe pieces. This, I think, is one of the most beautiful, and I think it's not overlooked, but not really talked about enough, if you ask me, when it comes to the post-Lemania Patek Philippe hand-wound chronographs with two register, because for the longest time, and this is an era that's concluded with the reference 5070. And 5170 was, in fact, Patek's first hand-wound chronograph movement that replaced the Lemania CH27 base that they used both for 5070, but also also featured, of course, in generations of technically perpetual calendar chronographs in reference 3970 and 5170 as a reference introduced the new in-house movements, the CH29 base, hand wound as well, which was also the core of a new generation of perpetual calendar chronograph by Patek II in 5270. This is, of course, a very special version of the hand-wound chronograph by Patek Philippe, in platinum, but also with a kind of gradient blue dial with the baguette cut diamonds as hour markers. We have 9 of them, skipping 3, 4, 8, 9 o'clock, and of course doubled at 12 o'clock. This particular example is from 2018. Here's a look at the movements. The CH29-535 PS. Of course, beyond just aesthetic appeal of this watch, with that, again, smoky blue dial with baguette cut diamonds as indices, there's also the fact that it had about a year of production, so quite limited in number, presumably for that reason. This particular piece does appear to come as a full set with box, papers, and all kinds of product literature, a leather bifold wallet to hold those documents to, the certificate of origin peeking right behind. This is lot 353 with an estimated value set within the range of 60,000 to 100,000 euro. The current bid stands at 65,000 euro. We talked quite a bit about the 5960. I extolled its virtues and how different it can be in all the various shades of gold and other metals in which it was offered. Here's a pink gold example, 5960R, with a black dial, which makes it look like a very distinguished, complicated dress watch. The combination of annual calendar and a self-winding chronograph with the added flyback function is, of course, both incredibly modern and very useful. This particular piece, too, comes with the presentation box and the Patek Philippe certificate of origin. Estimated value of the piece is between 24,000 to 45,000 euros. And currently the bid for lot 356, which is a Patek Philippe annual calendar chronograph, reference 5960R, stands at 30,000 euro. Now, the 5960 was altogether discontinued in all various configurations. There is a 5961 currently in the lineup, which has a diamond set bezel, but by and large, the reference number that replaced it as an annual calendar chronograph is the 5905, which you are seeing here as 5905 line 1A. In stainless steel on a matching bracelet. My predilections make me think that this is actually a lesser watch than the 5960 line 1A because it's too damn big to begin with, 42 millimeters. The 5960 scaled right over 40 millimeters in diameter and just wore perfectly. And I think the beads of rice style, kind of vintage inflected bracelets that the stainless steel versions of those were matched with were simply perfect. This kind of bracelet they also offer more recently with the Aquanaut as well. I never understood, people give a lot of flack about bracelets to any other brand, I think, other than Rolex. Everyone gets some measure of sensor. Patek doesn't, for whatever reason. I mean, the beads of rice bracelets they have, don't take me wrong, in stainless steel or in precious metals, even in platinum, those are amazing. But these, I never understood. They really don't belong to a watch of this caliber. I don't know why they continue to use them, but maybe that's just me. Maybe you have a different experience. Your mileage may vary in either case. This particular piece has a green dial. It does come as a full set, not only the certificate of origin and the presentation box, but also the product literature, as well as the outer case. Of course, that pin pusher, calendar corrector is included as well. And here's a peek at the self-winding movement. The pre-auction estimate here for lot 355 was set between 28,000 to 50,000 euros. And it is being bid at 32,000 euros currently. Of course, there's a lot of time to go, a little less than 2 weeks, as I mentioned. This is for an annual calendar chronograph with flyback functionality in stainless steel, reference 5905 line 1A with the green dial. Let's look at some other watches, and even let's go all the way to the end and see if they have anything interesting, if they have anything intriguing. And I think at least for me they do. And maybe some others, some other weirdos in the audience might be interested in these as well. There are two Frank Muller pieces for a special edition for Greece in two metals. I think lot 504 makes much more sense because it does represent almost perfectly the colors of the Hellenic flag, blue and white. Those distinctive Arabic numerals are rendered in blue over a silver dial with a wave-like pattern. Broadsword hands, which are generously inlaid with luminous material, including the centrally deployed chronograph seconds hand. There's a Greek flag at 6 o'clock, right above a porthole-like opening, which is also framed in blue. Those details actually, the fact that every sector of the dial is framed with a blued ring, I think is a nice touch. And there are a couple of distinct shades of blue on the dial, which also altogether make for a pleasing, for an interesting aesthetic. At 3 o'clock, there's a 30 minutes totalizer, and at 9 o'clock, there's a subdial for continuous running seconds. This piece, again, is a Frank Muller chronograph, a limited edition of 50 pieces for Greece. This happens to be actually number 1. And it's mounted on a blue rubber strap as well. Comes as a full set with a stunning presentation box that has this sort of aquamarine shade. This is lot 504 for a Frank Muller stainless steel chronograph, number 1 of a 50-piece limited edition made for Greece, bearing the colors of the Greek flag and bearing the Greek flag itself at 6 o'clock. The starting bid for the piece would be €6,000, and the estimated value is between 8,000 to 12,000 euro. There is a version in pink gold with the dial still reflecting the colors of the Greek flag. This piece shares the same presentation box. It's that wonderful shade of blue. And it's also number 1 of only 10 pieces in pink gold. The estimated value remains the same, 8,000 to 12,000 euro, and the starting bid, and no one has bid yet, is also 6,000 euro for this special edition Frank Muller chronograph For Greece, one of only 10, number 1 of 10 at lots 505. At lots 448, we have a Quartier Tortue, a perpetual calendar with a unique shape and a skeletonized dial. The piece, I believe, is some sort of limited edition. Maybe it's simply numbered because it belongs to the privé collection, the private collection. Not the CPCP from back in late 90s and early 2000s. But the one that was recently revived and re-energized. And the piece also has a retrograde hand for the day of the week, which snaps back every Monday or every Sunday at midnight. Perpetual calendars, I think, can be quite interesting depending on the dial layout, to have an open work, to have a skeletonized dial, because the module is right there in front of your eyes. So if you like kind of that sort of movement of gears, you might be in for a treat. The date is shown with this spade style indicator on the periphery of the dial. And there's a subsidiary dial at 12 o'clock, which is for the indication of the month. And that in turn surrounds the leap year indicator. The hexagonal crown is topped off with a multifaceted sapphire. And the white gold case is 40 by 42 millimeters. So quite substantial, actually. And here's the presentation box, which of course belongs to Cartier's red box treatment. The starting bid is at 15,000 euros, and the estimate is set within the range between 15,000 to 26,000 euro. At 451, we have one of my favorites, modern Breguet pieces. This is the reference 797 in pink gold from the Tradition series that was introduced by Nick Hayek Sr. in 2006 as a way of both living up to the contemporary standards of high horology in demonstrating the mechanism of the watch on this exposed main plate of the movements. That being said, the design of the watch also is very much influenced by pocket watches that were made by Abraham Louis Breguet. And of course, the watch aesthetically carries all the hallmarks of the aesthetic codes established for a Breguet wristwatch as well, with a silvered dial that is fashioned out of a gold blank and engine turns by hand with a rose lathe. Roman numerals on a Breguet frosted hour track, Breguet styled hands made out of stainless steel, heat blued. And this particular piece also has a retrograde seconds hand, which of course is one of the most fascinating and engaging ways of seeing a retrograde movement, a retrograde complication in action. I like the combination of the pink gold material for the case and kind of this anthracite gray frosted decoration of the movements. It kind of lives up to the steampunk ethos of this particular design, this specific model. It's both a throwback and with a, you know, it's a throwback to the past, but it has also this hint of futuristic outlook as well. Of course, you have the extended lugs, the entirely fluted case band. The teardrop shape of the lugs, of course, also are quite a treat, with the domed, smooth bezel. All of these give the watch a very distinguished look that one comes to associate with Breguet. A self-winding movement that has a hammer style oscillating weight, much like Breguet's first introduction of a self-winding movement to the world of pocket watches. He had a similar mechanism, similar system. And here's a beautiful bird's eye. I think this is bird's eye maple, I want to say. Beautiful veneered wooden box. Very minimalistic, but also stylish at the same time. Kind of like the watch, right? Of course, Tradition is probably the most in-your-face expressions of the Breguet aesthetic, perhaps, as a series. Before we dip into the sporty watches or sports watches like the Type 20 and the Marine more recently. This is lot number 451 for the Breguet Tradition 797 BR in pink gold. The case is 40 millimeters in diameter, but wears slightly larger than that due to the extended lugs. So feel free to try one before you go any further. If you're kind of averse to larger watches, although again, for a large dress watch, it actually wears quite well. The estimated value of the piece is within the range of $20,000 to $30,000, and the starting bid is $20,000. Lot 458 is Vacheron Constantin overseas in pink gold. Doesn't include the bracelets as far as I can tell now from the first look, but it does have both a calfskin brown leather strap with contrast stitching and the black textured rubber strap, and it does have the silvered opaline white dial. Perhaps not the most hip, most popular configuration, but nevertheless, I think one of the most aesthetically pleasing variations of this watch. The piece comes with not only the presentation case, but with the outer packaging, as well as the Vacheron Constantin warranty cards. I have highlighted the additional leather strap. This piece has an estimated value between 20,000 to 30,000 euro, and the starting bid is at 20,000. Of course, like most Vacheron Constantin pieces beyond the entry level, this piece carries the hallmark of Geneva proudly, both on its movement and its case. Lot 458 for a Vacheron Constantin overseas in pink gold with the silvered opaline dial. At 461, we have another very interesting watch. This is a Reverso Giro Tourbillon or Gyro Tourbillon 2. It's a Reverso with a swiveling case, of course, as is usually the case. That's not an optical illusion. It's just their handy way of demonstrating both faces of the watch at once. The Gyro Tourbillon has a cylindrical balance spring and a spherical tourbillon that rotates on a double axis. The outer cage travels at 60 seconds, so completes a revolution once per minute. The case is fashioned out of platinum, and it does have a locking mechanism, as you can see here, that you can use on the left flank. A very interesting and industrial looking semi-open works dial with hobnail decoration on the plates. There's a 24-hour indicator on the main dial, on the recto, so to speak, and on the verso, you get another look at the tourbillon and the movements overall, as well as a power reserve indicator. Of course, these kinds of ultra complicated reversos are extremely imposing. They can be quite big. This is 39 by 55. And that's quite a big reverso. Remember the reverso Kantai, which is not the biggest reverso anymore, but the one that is, I think, most appealing to the modern taste is 26 by 42. So this is considerably bigger. And also remember the Gyro Tourbillon 2 is pretty thick watch as well, at almost 16 millimeters. This was one of 75 pieces. And this particular example is actually number 31. That is lot 461 for a Reverso Gyro Tourbillon 2 by Jaeger-LeCoultre in platinum with a spherical tourbillon that revolves around the double axis. The piece is currently being bid at 50,000 euro. And the estimated value of the item is between 60,000 to 120,000 euro. At 468, you guys know that the IWC Da Vinci is one of my absolute favorites when it comes to perpetual calendar chronographs. When the IWC Da Vinci was introduced in 1985, the reference 3750, it was only the second perpetual calendar chronograph to be produced in series, or rather IWC was only the second brand, only the second maker to have produced a perpetual calendar chronograph in serial production. The only other brand was, of course, Patek Philippe with 1518 and 2499 at the time. The 3970 was to be introduced in the following year. Of course, the IWC Da Vinci Perpetual Calendar Chronograph is seemingly a much more humble watch, technically speaking. It's built on the base of the ubiquitous self-winding chronograph caliber Valjoux 7750. And Kurt Klaus, who was the head of the technical departments, the technical director of IWC at the time, is said to have come up with the idea for this module while walking his dog one morning. It's a very charming story. I don't know how true it is, but at any rate, it's a pure stroke of genius. But they managed, as a result, to make a watch that was easier to produce, much easier and less costly to service as well, because of the wide availability and serviceability of the movement base. Beyond that, I really do like this watch aesthetically as well. I know it's, as a design, it can be somewhat divisive, but I find a lot to love here. I like the fact that the moon phase indicator is at 12 o'clock, which somehow gives it a prominence. I actually love the hooded lugs and the mushroom pushers for the chronograph. Pardon me. And I also like the fact that there's a 4-digit indicator for the year. And as you can see here, this is a full set. It has like this sort of briefcase-like presentation box. And that 4-digit expression of the year was, at least in part, a marketing gimmick, because they came with this vial that basically allowed a modification for the next century, right? As if to imply, you know, this watch will take your descendants into the next century, and here is the key to it. It's really incredible, and once again, something that testifies to the kind of marketing genius Günther Blümlein was. And I'm not going to harp on for too long, but Günther Blümlein was, of course, behind the revival of not only IWC, but also Jaeger-LeCoultre and A. Lange & Söhne as well. This is lot 468, a reference 3750 IWC Da Vinci Perpetual Calendar Chronograph in yellow gold. The piece comes with box and papers and seemingly as a full set. and it has an estimated value that is in the range between 5,000 to 8,000 euro. The starting bid is 4,200 euro. These pieces, on the secondary market at least, overall, if you are patient and if you know where to look for, are very attractively priced. If you need any help, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to see what we can find. Please hit the like button if you haven't already. You guys know, for a channel of this size, that matters a lot. It really does help. If you can leave a comment after the broadcast is completed, that also helps. In either case, please pass around the link, spread the word to fellow enthusiasts, other watch collectors, and help me grow this community that comes together around wristwatches, around knowledge of and passion for wristwatches. We have recently celebrated 2 years, as you remember, and hopefully we will have many, many more. At 475, we have a much more conventional Frank Müller, a somewhat unusual one. This is a piece that harkens to the aesthetics of a classic chronograph, and really, to a large extent, to the aesthetic of a Patek 1463, the so-called Tasti Tondi. The dimensions are also evocative of a bygone era, you might say, but I think very reasonable actually for an elegant chronograph. 37 millimeters in diameter. Stainless steel with a black dial, a single Breguet numeral at 12 o'clock. The piece is powered by a hand-wound movement. Of course, it has a solid case back, which is part of the anti-magnetic properties of the watch. But the caliber 1874 that is a Lemania base is actually not all that different from the Omega 861. So you get the classic hand-wound chronograph aesthetic with a 3 sub-dial configuration. But the movement is not that much different from a neo-vintage Omega Speedmaster. So make of that what you will. Of course, these pieces have gotten a little more attention on the secondary market since, I think, a few dealers from London paid attention to it. What I think a collected man sold a couple of them some years back, but most recently, I believe it was already last year, Waco of Revolution magazine did a very expensive, if you ask me, outrageously priced reissue of this particular aesthetic, with a larger case and an exhibition case back and so forth. And that's kind of brought some more attention to this particular watch. It's said to have been made by Frank Müller at the time for some Italian dealers as a kind of special edition. But I don't know in how many pieces exactly. But this is the Frank Müller Sport Limited Edition chronograph, hand wound, 37 millimeters in stainless steel from around 1996. The estimated value of the piece is between 8,000 to 14,000 euro, and the current bids stands at 5,000 euro. Hey, Frank and Honest. No, I haven't. Let me know if you have any suggestions. I think when I go full time, the idea now, and it's not a final decision, nothing is set in stone, but my idea is that I would have a 2-hour show at noon my time, so 12 to 2 PDT, and then I would have 7 p.m. to midnight. So, streaming about, anywhere from 6 to 8 hours per day. I might take a day or two off once every so often, but I will have something at noon and something at night. But it's not set in stone. The idea is I would have a stream at noon, a shorter one, and another one at night, starting earlier, but certainly no earlier than 7, and ending probably around midnight. But thanks for asking, and let me know whether you have any suggestions or any preferences. I will consider it. I don't know if I can cater to it necessarily, but I will consider it. Lot 477. You guys know, at the height of the markets, probably these Snoopy Speedmasters were one of the hottest watches. That's no longer exactly the case anymore, but they still trade relatively well on the secondary market. I think they are very good looking pieces. This is the Omega Apollo 12 Silver Snoopy Awards. The particular example is from last year with the caliber 3861. I really like the silvered white dial with the blue accents, including the tachymeter bezel. The Snoopy is a little too much for me, but then again, I've never been a big fan of the whole shtick for the Speedmaster. Of course, this is Apollo 13 rather than Apollo 12. I don't know why I said that. A third in the series, so to speak, of the Snoopy Awards, which was first bestowed upon Omega by NASA in 1970. It has kind of an animation on the back, which is engaged when the chronograph is activated. Of course, the award was given for the vital part that Omega's Speedmasters played in that Apollo mission, because the astronauts used the Omega chronograph during a critical movement in trying to make their way back home. This is lot 477 for the Silver Snoopy Awards watch, the 50th anniversary version. It also comes on a lovely textured blue strap with contrast stitching as well, which fits the larger blue theme of the watch. The pre-auction estimate was set between 10,000 to 15,000 euro, with the current bid standing at 12,000 euro. Ozzy, how are you doing, man? Yeah, I think, you know, look, I'm committed to doing just Watch Talk, and obviously there will be more scheduled programming, you know, at least having a panel. It doesn't have to be an extremely special guest, but at least having a panel 1 or 2 days a week, that will most certainly help. And I'm happy to coordinate and collaborate with people for that. Of course, I will have more special guests that will be more frequent than it is now. And yeah, that's the idea. Fries, good morning. Fries with mayo. We have had our French fries monster for a little while, but fries with mayo, I have missed him. Thank you for being here. My regards to Brussels. Frank and Honest says, that's good to hear. I would think that going on a bit earlier would help with the East Coast audience. That's the idea, but I can't go on before 6. And 6 is too early as well. I don't like eating in front of the camera, right? You know, if I go on at 6, it would be a disaster. I mean, I would have to feed myself somehow. Can't really do that on the screen. Just don't like it. But we'll figure out the logistics. To be honest, would love to see your show grow as you deserve it. Thank you. You're too kind. It takes time. You know, it takes time to build these things. I'm not gonna use any of these pleasantries and terms, but in due time, things will happen. This fascinating chronograph, seemingly from the immediate post-war era. It has that classic chronograph movements, caliber 13ZN, which is a very well-regarded movement for vintage Longines chronographs. This particular example is in pink gold and is relatively oversized for the time at 37 millimeters. And the piece has this sort of champagne tinted dial, which, whether it's due to aging or not, has this two-tone look. It's quite beautiful with the tachymeter inscribed on the perimeter of the dial, a 30-minute totalizer at 3, and continuous running seconds at 9, and a knurled crown that sits relatively flush to the case, which has a very utilitarian look, by the way, even though it is in precious metal. I like those slightly stubbier lugs, which are beautifully curved as well, as you can see from the profile here. All the hands, including the chronograph hands, are heat blued, which makes them both quite vibrant and perfectly legible. And here's a look at that well-regarded column wheel chronograph movement, 13 ZN, or ZN, as you Americans would call it. Beautiful chronograph bridge there. The estimated value of the piece is 3,000 to 5,000 euro, and lot 479, which is a Longines reference 5213, a 37 millimeter pink gold chronograph from around 1945. The piece is currently being bid at 2,200 euro. No feeding like Archie. Is that a request, a demand, or just a description, or what, or repetition of what I said? Let me know. Maybe, maybe my audience wants me to mukbang the shit out of everything, live. I'm happy to entertain requests. For the right amount, I can do a lot of things. I mean, I have, frank and honest keeps me honest, keeps repeating how much he appreciates my integrity and all. But me becoming full-time means more content, means more live streams, means more, of course, produced content as well. Maybe in time we'll strike a balance, but expect me to do a lot of live streams in the beginning, and that also means that I will need more money. I mean, this means this will become my main stream for income. So it is what it is. If I need to eat on the screen to make money, I'll do just that. Lot 482. Man, I really don't like this watch. Along with the Moza Streamliner, it's probably the watch within that integrated bracelet sports watch hype that I like the least. And I think you can see the parallels already. Both watches have this sort of heavily 70s infused design that looks dated. You know, again, it's just personal taste at the end of the day, but that is my opinion. Entirely executed in titanium, with a kind of TV shaped case and integrated bracelets. Laurent Ferrier's sports watch is said to have been influenced for his career in racing cars. And in fact, his partner then, Francois Survenant, was also his teammate when they placed third in Le Mans, right behind Paul Newman's team. And this particular limited edition, which is made in 40 pieces, actually uses the colors of the Porsche 935 that they drove: green, purple, and yellow. And that 40 is, of course, inscribed right here in the continuous, or rather small second subdial at 6. 935 is the racing version of the 911 Turbo. The pre-auction estimate was set between 30,000 to 50,000 euro for lot 482, with the current bid standing at 32,000 euro. At lots 398, we have a very humble and interesting Datejust, fully executed in stainless steel, mounted on an oyster bracelet. This is the reference 16 to 20 from right around year 2001, 36 millimeters. It has a stainless steel case and bracelet, but also the bezel, the engine turned bezel, is in stainless steel as well. The piece comes with box and papers. Very nice and authentic. But perhaps the most interesting part of this watch is the tropical dial, which has taken a very lovely copper tone. And it just looks like $1,000,000, especially with that tapestry pattern. It's like You know, it's like those lighters that I really love, like my father's Dupont lighter. It's it's hard not to love a dial like that. You know, people sell just about anything attaching the name tropical to the dial, tropical, spider, and whatever. And for the most part, what they are trying to push you is something that is actually damaged. Um, and that shouldn't really add any value to the watch. And I understand some people are attracted to it. And, you know, I'm, you know, I'm not the boss of anyone, so I'm not going to decide you know, why and whether people should part with their money. Um, but that's something to keep in mind, right? This is a tropical dial. Tropical is when the sort of exposure to the elements, be it sunlight, humidity, even salt water, actually leaves a relatively even and, if not objectively or universally, at least a largely positive uh, aesthetic effect on the watch. Otherwise, it's just damage. So I would never pay premium for a spider dial, for example, which is just a cracked dial. It's there's no way, no shot. Um, but anyway, this is a great example of a tropical dial with a tapestry pattern on a Rolex Datejust uh, on an oyster bracelet, all in stainless steel, including the engine turned bezel. And the tapestry, tropical tapestry dial with this copper tone is an absolute delight. It doesn't hurt that the piece comes as a nice set with box and papers. The estimated value of it is between 4,000 to 6,000 euro, and lot 398 is currently being bid at 3,200 euro. Please hit the like button in the meantime. It makes a huge difference for a channel of this size. Ah, this is what I was talking about just now, right? When I said that leather strap versions of popular sports watches, you know, Daytona and Nautilus and the Royal Oak, um, don't seem to take the kind of premiums that their bracelet versions do. And this is just a great example of that. Um, it's a reference 14800, so in stainless steel. The case is a modified departure from Jarajanta's original design, still finished with all the fine details that entail a contrast between grain brushed and mirror polished surfaces. But the leather strap is fed into the case, which has a different extension at the end, at the lugs. Than the classic Royal Oak case. And this particular piece has a mother of pearl dial that I have seen very rarely. And honestly, it looks absolutely beautiful to me. These are mid-sized Royal Oaks. Remember, they're also neo-vintage, so more like a 36 rather than the 37, like the newer references, like the 15550. And of course, they have a closed case back. This one is personally inscribed for someone. $14,800, pieces from around 1994. So a very, very interesting piece. Currently being bid at €8,000 at lot 403. The estimated value is set between 8 to 14,000 euro. Again, if you have any watch related questions, if you would like to direct my attention to any one of these watches, any particular lots that you would like to highlight, feel free to send in the number and I will be more than happy to bring them up. Next up is a piece that is perhaps the most iconic reduced sized or mid-sized reference of the Royal Oak in yellow gold. This is the 14790 BA from around the same time period. It's a contemporary of the model that we were looking at. But of course, with the integrated bracelet here and in yellow gold, it also has the classic night blue cloud, gray, black, blue dial in petite tapisserie pattern. Very, I think, very versatile actually for the size especially, and in precious metal could be of interest to men and women alike, especially in the yellow golds. This particular lot number 402, started with no reserve, but the bidding has already climbed up to 13,000 euro. So probably this will go through the high ceiling of the pre-auction estimates, which was set between 10,000 to 15,000 euro. Incidentally, I'll come back to some reversos here later. Incidentally, 14790 was not the first reduced sized reverso. Royal Oak, both models that I really like, as you guys know. There was the 4100. Before then, and this particular version of the 4100 in two-tone, and it's a little smaller, by the way. 4100 is more like 35 millimeters in diameter, and the bezel itself is a little thinner. But in two-tone, in bimetal, this piece was actually worn for years by Prince Michael of Kent. Right here. I have put it on my Instagram too at a point, but here's the watch that Prince Michael of Kent wore for years. And here's the watch that is on sale at Sotheby's Paris Fine Watches auction as lot 404. It's a reduced size Royal Oak in two-tone, in stainless steel with gold interlinks, tapering interlinks, and a gold bezel, not to mention the gold fixtures on the dial. It has a personal marker there right under 6 o'clock, which I find quite undesirable. I don't mind the engraving on the back all that much, but that was really unnecessary. But anyway, that's probably going to bring the price down. So if you are fine with that, if you think you can find a way to cover or hide it somehow, this can be a good deal. It's lot 404 for an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak reference 4100 SA two-tone reduced sized Royal Oak from around 1980. The starting bid would be 6,000 euro, and the estimates is set between 8,000 to 12,000 euro. I would again kindly ask you to hit the like button if you haven't done so already. It really helps. You cannot imagine how much of a difference it makes. Try to remember to leave a comment. That also brings more exposure to each and every video. But beyond that, please remember that this is a truly independent platform. I don't have any sponsors. I'm not in the pockets of the industry. I don't serve as a mouthpiece of gray market profiteers. I don't represent any particular auction house. And as you know, I always insist that you look far and wide, that you do your own homework, that you remain patient and find the best deals without necessarily running after a particular name, whether it's a dealer or an auction house. You always go with the best example of the exact watch you want. So all that goes to say is that this channel is completely in your service, at the service of its audience, and so am I. This also means I am at your behest. So if you would like to contribute using any of the options that YouTube provides you, like a super chat, I would be very grateful. If you want to use other options, the links are provided in the video description. I really appreciate your consideration. At any rates, the fact that you're here, that you're present already means something, especially if you are hitting the like button. And if you are not yet following me on Instagram, that always helps to follow me there and like some of my posts. All of that will help me to expand this platform and serve you even better with more content, with better produced content as time goes on. Just last year, Audemars Piguet celebrated the 30th anniversary of the Royal Oak Offshore, which was designed by Emmanuel Guet as a derivation of the original Janta design. For me, it was a true slow burner. You guys must have heard stories of Janta himself very much being revolted by the idea. But this is the original, the beast. The chronograph complication was until then not offered in the Royal Oak. So beyond the more rugged and butch design elements, this model was also intended to introduce a new complication into the lineup. And of course, the rubber details, the exposed gasket under the octagonal bezel, the pushers, and the crown are part of those distinctive elements of the Royal Oak Offshore, of the beast. This piece is, of course, not just any other example of the beast, of the Royal Oak Offshore. I love these octagonal presentation boxes. Of course, this is at once kind of a regular one because they also had wooden boxes made out of oak, but these green leather versions are great too. This also has like a porthole like exhibition because what it contains is the 25721 BC, so made in white gold. I'm sure you can even notice that in the pictures. There's less of a glimmer, more of a warm glow to the metal. And the dial, which has the Petite Tapisserie pattern, actually is set with brilliant cut diamonds, exactly 8 of them for the indices, for the hour markers. There's a internal magnifier for the porthole like opening for the date indicator at 3. Of course, the double branding, both in signature and the initial for the two founding families, right next to that date indicator, a 30-minute totalizer at 9 o'clock, 12-hour counter at 6, and the continuous running seconds at 12. The hands are, again, styled in the traditional Royal Oak way, but are a little fatter, a little thicker. It's really a beautiful piece in its own way. I would never imagine I would say something like that, but it is what it is. You know, times change, and we change as well. This is lot 405 for a Royal Oak Offshore Beast in white gold with a diamond set dial from around 1996. It comes with a octagonal green leather presentation box. It's only the 8th one to be made in this particular configuration, currently being bid at 40,000 euro, with an estimated value that is set within the range between 40,000 to 80,000 in euro. I'm going to try my best not to take a break until midnight, which is when I will stop, because I have a horrible back pain that hasn't let me up for the last 3 days. So I don't think I can last much longer past midnight tonight. But you guys have realized that I've been pretty consistent this week. I have, in fact, had a live show every day, including Wednesday. It was a short one at noon with the professor. I hope you caught up with me to some extent during the week. As you guys know, it all boils down to being in shape. Nothing else, not much else. Once you put the hours in, once you put in the work, everything else follows. And I'm really thankful for the support I get from you in whatever shape or form. It's always fantastic. We're looking at the Sotheby's Paris Fine Watches auction, which will close almost by the end of the month, but in less than 2 weeks, so on March 28th. There's a classic perpetual calendar by Audemars Piguet in that very conservative 36 millimeter round case designed by Jacqueline Guimier. A full set, as you can see here. Even comes with a, what is that? Is it VHS or Betamax? Even comes with a video cassette amazing, that demonstrates the functions of the watch, of the perpetual calendar. This is the reference 25661, introduced in 1985. Was only made in 244 examples in yellow gold. What is special for this particular reference, for this particular model, is the sapphire caseback, which I think is delightful because it uses that same base of the ultra-thin self-winding JLC movement with the full rotor. It also happens to have a skeletonized rotor that puts the initials of the two founding families in sharp relief and is supplemented by that additional 21 carats gold weight. Quite beautiful. And I've always liked that 4 subdial look with the calendar indicators slightly sunken in that opaline white dial, and the opening for the moon phase indicator at 6 o'clock. The heat blued micro hands for the calendar indicators coordinate beautifully with the night sky of the moon phase indicator. And the rest of the fixtures on the dial are in yellow gold, which match the material of the case with an elegant stepped bezel. This is lot 409 for an AP perpetual calendar with a round case, 36 millimeters in yellow gold. The reference 25561BA also happens to have a sapphire caseback, which makes it relatively rare. This example has been valued between 7,000 to 10,000 euro, but there are a few connoisseurs already bidding on it, and the bidding right now stands at 9,500 in euro. There was also a very interesting Octofinissimo there, made for the Paris Watch Club. There we go. I know, once again, this is a pretty divisive design, a segmenting design, as they say sometimes in the industry. This is the titanium version. Titanium on the integrated bracelets with a grayscale carbon dial. I really like the design that is derived from the octagonal inspiration of Gérard Janta, but is actually designed by Fabrizio Bonamassa Stigliani. One of the easiest wearing and feather light versions of an integrated bracelet watch, especially in titanium. The piece has intriguing and elegant details, which includes the sleek micro-rotor movements with a platinum oscillating weight, and the design of the bracelets. Unfortunately, they didn't they didn't photograph the buckle, which is basically sunken inside the bracelet, so which that gets rid of the extra bulk and helps the watch wear even closer to the skin and very in a very organic way. And it is a watch. Again, sometimes people hate the Octofinissimo for this, but for all its ultra thin properties and feather like weight, it is a watch that has a big presence on the wrist because of this almost sculptural, you might even say architectural, multi-layered design of it. The piece comes as a full set that marks it as a special edition for the Paris Watch Club. The pre-auction estimates was set in the range between 10 to 15,000 euro, with the starting bids at 10,000 euro. That was lot 408, which is a Bulgari Octofinissimo in titanium with a grayscale carbon dial made for the Paris Watch Club as a limited edition. There's a more unassuming and earlier reference of the AP perpetual calendar with a round case, double-stepped bezel, of course, in yellow gold. This is a reference 5548 BA, made for the famous Parisian jeweler Fred, which today belongs to LVMH, by the way. As you can see, this earlier iteration has a dial that's practically flat, right? It doesn't have those sunken subdials for the calendar, which I think takes away something from the depth and aesthetics of that dial. I do prefer the later versions because of that. But these are incredible. I mean, all the range is really incredible. And they wear really nicely because, again, they're about 7 millimeters thick, and the case is 36 millimeters in diameter, but has a nice presence on the wrist. The dial looks quite large for the size and is very legible as well. This is lot 411 for an AP 5548BA, a perpetual calendar in a 36 millimeter round case with a stepped bezel. Classic silvered opaline white dial. The piece is from around 1986 with an estimated value between 8,000 to 12,000 euro. The bidding currently stands at 8,000 euro. And there's a piece that's even more special. Another perpetual calendar with a blue Tuscan dial. And a very special case with this kind of roped bezel around the stepped design. Another example of tropicalization that makes the piece a lot more interesting than how it began its life. Because what was a blue Tuscan dial in the beginning became purple or blurple, as sometimes people like to say it. Tuscan blue hand-hammered dial as it appears in the 1985 AP catalog. Also featured in the 20th Century Complicated Wristwatches, a book by Audemars Piguet. The piece comes with a certificate of origin, product literature, and the presentation case as well, which makes this reference 25561 even more exceptional. The piece is in platinum. And bears the number 2. Speaking of which, I have to set my library right next to it rather than having to go and hunt for these books. But I have the 20th Century Complicated AP book, of course. Let's see if I can find a book and find the design in it. I'm not sure if I can do that in this quickly. Okay. No, I'm not gonna hunt for it now. We'll look through it maybe while I finish up this auction tomorrow. As you can see, this piece is trending a little higher at lots 410 than the other examples we looked at. The reference 5561 from around 1983. The estimated value of the piece was within the range between 26,000 to 48,000 in euro, and the piece is currently being bid at 38,000 euro. Okay, we are slowly but surely heading to the last stretch. Again, if you have any special requests, if you have any watch-related questions, feel free to send them in now so I have enough time to cover it. And that goes for any of the lots that I might have skipped and that I didn't yet have time to cover. Please feel free to direct my attention to them, perhaps with a super chat. That would be much appreciated. We'll perhaps look at some Cartier and leave the Rolex and Patek for tomorrow. Here is lot 442, which is a Cartier tank created for the 50th anniversary of Indian independence in 1997. The piece mixes together in a very interesting way the Roman numerals that we readily associate with Cartier with Arabic numerals at the decimals 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50, which has a gilt font, guilloche dial with a wave pattern. Of course, 1947 to 1997, the dates of the Indian independence is also marked on the dial. Oops. Sorry, I wasn't showing it to you on the screen. A little mix up there. I apologize. We're right here now. This is the reference 1725, one of 50 pieces in 18 karat yellow gold. It comes with a blank set of papers, instruction manual, Cartier presentation case with its outer packaging. This is essentially a tank américain, which is kind of a streamlined and shrunk version of the tank cintré. There was apparently a limited edition made for the 50th anniversary of the State of Israel in 1998 as well, which is interesting. The case back is also engraved for this 50th anniversary of India edition, as India 1997. Here's the presentation material. And the certificates of the piece. This is number 31 out of 50 for the reference 1725. A limited edition Cartier Tank Américain for the 50th anniversary of Indian independence from 1997. Lot 442 is currently being bid at 10,000 euro with an estimated value of 10,000 to 18,000 euro. Lot 441, we have a limited edition from the Privé collection of the Tank Chinoise. This particular design, because of the overlapping elements, it's likened to the entrances of ancient temples. So that's where it's apparently takes its name. Interestingly, this particular design was introduced in 1922. So the current version that you're looking at is basically the centennial commemoration with an open worked dial in this platinum example. And the bridges are put together in a geometric pattern that evoke Chinese style. And it is decorated, those bridges are decorated in blue and burgundy lacquer, which I think complements the platinum case very nicely. And as Cartier usually does with platinum pieces, the hexagonal crown is topped with a ruby, a multifaceted ruby in this case. Here is a look at the movement from the back. Very fascinating. Very beautiful piece. Here's a look at the complete set for the lot 441, which is a Cartier Tank Chinoise from the limited editions in 2022 in platinum with the skeletonized dial that honors the Chinese inspiration behind the design. The bridges of the movement are decorated in blue and burgundy lacquer on the face of the watch. And the crown is topped off with a multifaceted ruby, which is reserved for platinum cases in Cartier. This is the reference 4390, with an estimated value between 30,000 to 60,000 euro. The starting bid is 30,000 euro. Hi, Memovox. Thank you. I think I know what you mean, Memovox. Hong Kong, for better or worse, is not independent, but perhaps there's an edition that commemorates the British handover of Hong Kong to China. Is that what it is? Of the Tank Américain again? Again, as you guys know, I try not to get political here, so I'm not gonna comment any further on that. But I think that's what you mean. Whether we wish it or not, Hong Kong is not an independent country, at least in the way it is internationally recognized. We're looking at lot 440, which is a variation of the tank that is usually presented as Cartier's answer to the Reverso, because the Tank Basculante has a kind of case design that can be reversed, of course, with a very different mechanism than the Reverso, since that is patented for the Reverso. That's very specific. This is the reference 2390 in stainless steel. .25 by 38 millimeters, so quite a compact, if not necessarily small, watch, but a very dressy, elegant piece. The piece comes with a presentation box, but has no papers. However, unlike some of the historical examples of the Basculante, this more contemporary / neo-vintage version actually has a hand-wound movement and not a quartz one. I've always liked how they placed the spinel in this case for the Basculante. It's always interesting. Of course, Cartier's red presentation box, what is not to like. Here's the back of the case, marked for 2001. I absolutely abhor the strap choice, but that's an easy fix. This is lot 440 for the Cartier Tank Basculante, reference 2390 in stainless steel, reversible case and a hand-wound movement. The piece is currently being bid at 3,000 euro, with an estimated value between 5 to 10,000. What has ever been achieved by a police helicopter? I wonder. I mean, they're just disturbing the peace at night. So unnecessary. So uncivilized, as Obi-Wan Kenobi used to say. in the old Star Wars. We have a couple of CP pieces, so maybe we can end with that. We can close with that. If you have any questions or if you want to contribute in any way, we have 10 to 15 minutes more. CP stands for Quartier Paris Collection Privée, or rather Collection Privée Quartier Paris, private collection of Cartier. It refers to a specific decade in a way, between 1998 and 2008, when Cartier basically produced this collection at the crossroads of their archival, recognizable designs and elements of high horology. And in fact, in many cases, they brought together some of the emergent independent watchmakers and some of their creations in terms of movements. And it was a very interesting cross-pollination that has already achieved some of its very desirable aspirational classics in the form of the monopusher chronographs, for example, like the in the Tortue shape especially, but also in the tank, which has a movement that was realized by THA, a collaboration between François-Paul Jean and Denis Flageolet in that particular instance. Vienna Alter was part of THA as well, but I don't think he actually collaborated on this particular movement. I don't think he was involved with THA at that particular point in time. I can direct you to the right resources. You know, if you think you know better, I'm happy to do that. People constantly, quote unquote, correct me on these kinds of things, but hey, it's okay. We all learn. We learn together. This particular model is perhaps a little more underrated. Tank AV is inspired by the design of the Tank Étanche, which is a which is a design from the 30s. Étanche means waterproof in French. Cartier, of course, has tried over the years to produce more water-resistant pieces. As you guys know, that's not much the case with a lot of pieces from the vintage period, from that Art Deco period. The Tank AV design has those 4 screws on the bezel, which basically evoke that étanche, that waterproof design, and the thickness of the watch also gives it a contemporary feel with nice curvatures and angles on the lugs as well. This is a version with a skeletonized dial, or rather an open-worked dial. A very interesting meandering layout for the bridges. The multifaceted cabochon that tops off the hexagonal crown. Or is it an octagonal? It's an octagonal crown, I think. Is quite delightful. Yeah, this is an octagonal crown. Beautiful. Here's a look at the movement from the back. The piece is in platinum, number 5 out of 20. It's inscribed with that number both on the movement and on the case. And it comes with the box and papers as well, not to mention the product literature. The estimated value of the piece was in the range between 15,000 to 30,000 in euro, and the current bid stands at 14,000. Memovox, that's a good comment. I'm glad I have you and others like you in the audience who can provide this kind of commentary. The French, in reference to Cartier making special editions that celebrate 50th anniversary of Israeli independence, 50th anniversary of Indian independence, Hong Kong being handed over to China by the Brits. And Memovox says the French might find a special pleasure in commemorating British colonies going rogue. No politics, of course, just a random observation. That's a good one. I like that. So last but not least, we have one more CPCP piece, one more, in fact, Tank Avis, if I'm not mistaken, at lot 439. This is the reference 2554. Again, the design remains the same. The case design and the dimensions remain the same. However, this particular example is rendered in white gold. And it has a rather unique way of indicating time. It's kind of a wandering hours complication, right? Where it has a wheel for the hours that obviously completes its full revolution in one day. And therefore, this scale-like opening at around 12 o'clock with the arrow pointer shows the hour. Kind of a regulator look for that reason as well, with the centrally deployed stainless steel heat-blued minute hands given full prominence at the center of the dial, with a square railroad style track for the minutes, and counterbalancing that aperture at around 12 o'clock. You have another one at 6 o'clock, which points to the date in 2 digits. That heat-blued minute hand, of course, coordinates beautifully with the multifaceted sapphire that tops off the octagonal crown. And you have an exhibition case back that gives a beautiful view of the hand-wound movements. The bridges are extravagantly and excessively embossed with the double wishbone logo of Cartier, and even this regulator, which is heat blued, carries that wishbone style logo of the Maison. I really like the design of this hand-wound movement, by the way. And the decoration is fitting. I think, much as we like all sorts of ribbing and Geneva stripes and all the variations and all the distinctive signatures of different regions and manufacturers, sometimes it's nice to see something a little different, even though at a technical level, it might be something simpler, something much more industrial rather than handcrafted, but it still looks good. At least for this particular watch, at least for what Cartier invokes. And here's the special presentation box, all red, of course, but also branded Collection Privée Cartier Paris. This was lot 439 for a Tank à Vie from that collection, reference 2554 in white gold. Wandering hours, kind of a regulator dial with a date indicator as well, which is both utilitarian but also aesthetically pleasing as well, since it balances out the opening for the indicator for hours. The estimated value was set between 10,000 to 15,000, and the current bid stands at 9,000 euros. I think this is it for the day, for the night, rather. Thank you for being here. If you haven't hit the like button, please do that. If you have not yet subscribed, I'm here with watch-related content every day, with live streams and shorter videos that focus on specific aspects of horology, looking at a variety of wristwatches through the lens of history, complication, and handcraft. So I think you will find a lot to learn, a lot to enjoy. If you want to support the channel, this channel has no sponsors. It's relatively small, and it serves as a mouthpiece for its audience, and no other masters than its audience. So if you would like to contribute in any way, YouTube offers a lot of options. Of course, members have access to exclusive content. Some people in the chat can testify to that. Of course, super chats, super thanks, super stickers, all of those are extremely welcome as well. If you want to contribute some other way, or perhaps a more anonymous way, of course, the links for the PayPal, Cash App, and the Patreon is also available in the video description. With that being said, again, I thank you for your presence and support. Feel free to write in the comments. That always helps. Share the link with others. Send the links of shorter videos, perhaps, to other collectors and enthusiasts, and that will help us grow the community that we have been building here for a little longer than 2 years now, purely around the knowledge of and passion for wristwatches. Thank you, Memovox, 50 Danish crowns. I'm sure you have seen this, but I still wanted to share it with you. And since I especially appreciate that contribution, Christian Hagen posted about the opening of the first Tudor boutique in Scandinavia today, and apparently it opened in Copenhagen. And he posted the FXD Alinghi chrono, Pelagos FXD Alinghi chrono, which is great. But he also posted this very interesting wristwatch, a Tudor Pelagos made for the Danish anti-terror task force. Very fascinating piece. And it seems, at least from the strap, it seems like a version of the FXD more than anything, but I'm not sure. Apparently made in 50 examples. And it was an aftermarket strap, apparently. Anyway, I'm gonna send you the link so you can explore for yourself right there in the chat. And maybe tell us more if you find anything else and anything interesting about this particular watch, this Tudor Pelagos that was made in 50 examples for the anti-terror units in Denmark. Thank you again. Thank you, Memovox. Thank you to everyone for your support and presence, for your interventions, interjections, questions, and reactions from the chats. Please hit the like button if you haven't done so already. That really helps. Any comments you leave, whether they're positive and loving, and caring and caressing, or nasty and vicious, they always help. So please do that right after the live stream ends. I will be with you tomorrow too, hopefully slightly earlier. I will try my best. But until then, stay safe, stay healthy, wear and enjoy your watches. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.